And as for Juan Williams, you may disagree with him. I do, oftentimes. But I respect him. He's a decent man. You can watch Juan express himself or not. It's your choice. That's what America is about. Choice. You can choose tonight. He's going to be on this network with Bill O'Reilly at 8 o'clock. Because this network still believes in freedom of speech on both sides. It's your choice. America, choose. Shut someone down or let them talk. These people want to shut your speech down. Let me tell you something. If anyone tries to shut down Keith Olbermann, I find this guy reprehensible, wrong, easy to beat, but that's a different story. But I stand shoulder to shoulder with him to defend his right to say the nonsense that he says. Never do I want him fired for what he says. My guess is he wouldn't do the same for me. But the difference here is I'm not a progressive. I believe the American people are smart, and in the end, they'll get it. I also believe the American people are good. The left believes Americans are stupid, and they need some overlord to figure it out for them. And I know this is a hard idea. I mean, go back to what I said earlier. A year ago, 2 years ago, you wouldn't believe these things. It's a hard idea to get your arms around because we've always believed that we're kind of in this together. It sounds crazy, but there are people in America who don't believe in America. This is even crazier sounding. There are people in America that want chaos and trouble in the streets. Now, why? Why? Because these organizations have a solution. The Tides Foundation, that's all about solutions. He has a solution. They have solutions. Workers of the world unite. Well, that's not the American way. So how do you get it? You need to come up with some things to get people to beg for that solution. It's the quickest way to gain control. What do you think we're seeing in France and in Greece? What is this? Do you remember on this program, how long ago did I say this was happening? 2 years ago? Year and a half? I told you this was going to happen. New York Times ridiculed me. Wait until it washes ashore in America. They are rioting in the streets in France over a 2-year increase in the retirement age from 60 to 62. They're calling it a birthright, but the retirement age was lowered from 65 to 60 in 1982. We have 40 million people now on food stamps in America. 40. We have people protesting in the streets because 99 weeks just isn't enough. Now, let me ask you something. How do you think it's going to go over when we finally realize that what England is doing, what they just realized is right, that we have to start to drastically cut government programs and handouts? Remember, what the goal here is fundamental transformation of America. Soros isn't getting in the way of the GOP avalanche because it's convenient to blame the coming economic avalanche on the GOP. Any breakdown, any chaos, like in France, it will work to their advantage. I want to show you a quote. We found it a couple of places, but this is in Stanley Kurtz's book, Radical in Chief. He is summarizing the view of 1960s radical Peter Dreyer, who wrote an influential essay on socialist policy in 1979. This is what he said, 1979. Gradually expand government spending until the country nears fiscal collapse. At that point, a public accustomed to its entitlements will presumably turn on its capitalist masters when they propose cutbacks to restore fiscal balance. Sound familiar? Cloward and Piven. That's why I told you that it was important to have the left-wing movement in place. I had to have it in place to, quote, trigger and turn the national fiscal crisis into a socialist direction. Put yourself in this situation. Because, see, this is where it will become real for you. You lose your job. You don't have health care. Your kids are hungry. The economy is spiraling out of control. Your dollar is losing value. And people are starting to riot in the streets. And this is happening in the streets of your town. And someone steps up to a microphone and says, I can bring order to the place. How many people in your neighborhood will say, wait, is that constitutional? No! Very few will. They'll just want order. Make it stop! That's what they're counting on. That's why chaos works in their favor. Because at that point, people just want it to stop. Do you remember the Fabian window I showed you? Remember this? Fabian Socialist. This is over in England. Very famous window. Here's the world. Here's the fire. They're hammering it to remold the world nearer to the heart's desire. Now, how are they doing it? They have to put the world into the fire. I'm going to show you what this all means. Next. Hello, America. I'll show you this Fabian windows. Fabian Socialist, England, early 19th century. This is not H.G. Wells, but what was his name, Joe? What was this? Not H.G. Wells, but George Bernard Shaw. George Bernard Shaw is here in the window, and he is got the world, and it's hot, and it's on an anvil, and they are starting to hammer it. They're going to remold the world nearer to the heart's desire. These guys are connected right directly to the American progressive movement, early 1900s, and they are, I mean, this is everything you need to know about the progressives. What they do is they have to put the world into a fire so they can hammer it and reshape it. The fire, you're seeing the literal fires now. When you put it in the world to make it hot, what you have to do is you have to stir it all up. Then you got to hammer it. What are they hammering it with? They're hammering it right now with debt. Just pounding and pounding and pounding. Remember, with all this debt, well, we need to have a new global financial order. And what does the world look like closer to their desire? United Nations, or a new world order, a global governance, state capitalism. China, we used to call it communism. Now they just call it state capitalism. Look, America, I want to talk to you a little bit about your choice here. Which America do you want? I think, last night I was talking about George Soros, and I made him into Mr. Potter, an old, frustrated old man. And I was thinking about It's a Wonderful Life, and I think it's the perfect example. You probably remember it from the movie, the small, idyllic town of Bedford Falls. It was a great little town. But the other side of the story was Pottersville. Same town, same people. Just something was different. One thing was different. The Jimmy Stewart character. The guy who just believed that people were good. The other side, when he was gone, the other was the Soros character. I know better than you. You remember what happened? Remember, he didn't think that he was going to go out and he was going to, create great things and do amazing things. And then the recession hit, and there was a run on the bank. You remember this guy? Remember this guy? And they came into the bank, and Jimmy Stewart, now, how much do you need just to hold you over? How much do you need? And he's like, I have $42.71. Do you remember, whatever it was? This is us now. This is where we're at. We're at this cage, and we're deciding who we are. So what is the lesson from the film? What makes Potterville possible is the absence of one man. The one man who thought he accomplished nothing. George Bailey wanted to travel the world, build big buildings. He never did, because he was always putting others ahead of himself. And he viewed himself as a failure, but he didn't realize all of the things that he had done and changed. He changed the whole town. This is one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite directors. Frank Capra. He did Why We Fight. He did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and all of them. This one was viewed as a bomb when it came out. I mean, it did nothing in the box office at all. And it was wildly, wildly panned by critics. Why? It's so silly. America isn't really like that. Really? This is the choice. This is the choice. They said the same thing about Frank Capra's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This is the choice. Are we in a country that is like Pottersville? Or are we Bedford Falls? I am here to tell you they were wrong. The same elites that are saying it today were wrong back then, and they are wrong now. Your choice, America, is Frank Capra, Norman Rockwell, freedom of speech. Norman Rockwell, the critics in Norman Rockwell, they still refer to him as an illustrator. He wasn't good enough to be a painter. He was an illustrator. That's an insult. And Norman Rockwell, the same thing. Oh, well, that didn't really exist. I believe it. I believe it. It's a Wonderful Life. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Norman Rockwell. I know there were problems. I know there were racists. I get it. But this also happened. I played you a clip last night. I'm going to play it again.
You once called me a warped, frustrated old man. What are you but a warped, frustrated young man? Miserable little clerk crawling in here on your hands and knees and begging for help. But I tell you what I'm going to do for you, George. Since the state examiner is still here, as a stockholder of the building and loan, I'm going to swear out a warrant for your arrest.
Okay. They can issue a warrant that Juan Williams is whatever. They can do it. They can fire him. They don't like his speech. Ariana Huffington can help Mr. Potter build his Potterville all she wants. But I know how this story ends. Why? Because Bedford Falls is real. And so are the people. I met them at 828. I meet them every time I walk a few blocks past Central Park South. It's real. You mark my words. People will mock this monologue because I told you that that's real. Meanwhile, the people that are mocking me choose Potterville. One brings misery and the other one brings freedom and hope and joy. It's not easy, but Bedford Falls becomes Potterville. It does if you don't understand that you make a difference. The moment we accept that we cannot be the best people we were meant to be, at the minute one of us says, I don't make a difference, that's when we become Potterville. I have told you to go out and vote. I ask you to do more than vote for a candidate. I ask you every day, reach inside of yourself and vote for George Bailey and Bedford Falls every day, because Bedford Falls exists.